But Stars said something unique. Chris Albrecht, who's the head of Stars, said to me, we love this, make the show for the fans, and trust that anyone who is not a fan of the books already will become one by the time they see the show. So it was an amazing, amazing thing.
Welcome to our panel tonight. I'm Leslie Yazel, Executive Editor of Cosmopolitan Magazine. We're thrilled here to have you. Thank you.
Oh.
Oh, okay, we're okay now.
Steady.
Steady. We're thrilled here to have with us Tobias Menzies. I paused. Diana Gabaldon. And Ronald D. Let's.
Hey. Cheers.
You got some stripy ones going on too. Yeah.
Okay.
Did you say matching socks?
No, those.
Be odd to wear odd socks, wouldn't it?
Let's get a little bit of the origin story of how this series of awesome books turned into a fantastic television show. Ron, how did you come across the source material? This is something that your wife turned you on to?
My wife and my producing partner, Meryl. Meryl's my producing partner, Terry's my wife. We were having dinner about 5-6 years ago as Battlestar Galactica was winding down. And they started, we were just talking about future projects and what we were passionate about and what might be something to pursue. And then Meryl and Terry started talking about Outlander, and it turned out they were both huge fans of these books, but had never spoken about it directly. And so they got very animated and very exciting, and I just kept drinking and eating and like whatever. And they said, no, you'll love this, you know, it's right up your alley. You love history and historical fiction and strong female characters, and you'll really like this. So I sat down and read the first book, and I was very taken with it from the very beginning. I really liked the central character of Claire. I responded to the richness and detail of the period, which I didn't know very much about. I didn't know too much about, you know, Scotland in the 18th century, but I was fascinated with it. And I really liked the way the story laid out, that there were a lot of twists and turns and a lot of reversals of fortune that I didn't see coming. And by the time I reached the end of the first book, I was sold. I said, okay, well, this is a great project. I could see how this became a television show. And, oh, there's 7 more? Oh, that's great. You know, nice. And so I said, I'm in. And then we tracked down the rights holder, who's a man named Jim Kohlberg. And at that point in time, Jim was interested in pursuing a feature version of Outlander. And I said, well, I really don't think it's a feature. I think it's really a television series. And so we just sort of agreed to disagree at that point and said, let's keep in touch. And literally every year, Meryl would call Jim and say, hey, how's that feature going? And he'd say, well, yeah, we're working on it. And then we'd call back the next year. And this went on for several years. And finally, 2.5 years ago, he said, you know, maybe it is a TV show. And I said, great, I'm in, and brought it to Sony Television, where my production deal is based. And they read it, and they were sold. And then I met with Diana. Meryl and I flew out to Scottsdale, spent a weekend with Diana, sort of talking about the story and the characters and the process of adaptation, how we would approach it. And that was a great meeting. And then we went out and started pitching it, and pitched it to Starz. Left a stack of books about yay big on their table, and they actually read them, which was a shocking thing. You know, because typically if you're taking a book out into the marketplace, studios and networks will buy it, and they'll say, well, basically, we bought this for the cover, and we don't really care what you do with the book. But Starz said something unique. Chris Albrecht, who's the head of Starz, said to me, we love this, make the show for the fans, and trust that anyone who is not a fan of the books already will become one by the time they see the show. So it was an amazing, amazing thing.
So Diana, this man shows up with his beautiful flowing hair and says, I'm going to make your books into a TV show. What worked for you about his pitch or his vision, or were there some tension? Tell me everything.
Oh, no, there was actually no tension. Mind you, this was not in any way my call to make. The option belonged to Jim Kohlberg. He could dispose of it as he liked, or make any arrangement he wanted. But yeah, but once I met with Ron and Meryl, we had a really good time. We found out that we were more or less on the same wavelength. They were talking, character, basically. And, this is the central thing of a story. I mean, in any story, it's always about the characters. And that's what I'd appreciated about Ron's work prior to that. And I certainly appreciated it in regard to my own characters, in that he appreciated who these people were, and that who they were was the heart of the story. It didn't have that much to do with the setting or the time travel or whatever. It was who this woman is, and what she's going to become and what's going to happen, and who is this man or these men, as the case may be, and what is their relationship with her. And that's what drives the story. And I said, yes, you got it, exactly. And they discussed with me their ideas for adaptation. Now, I have some small experience in translating text into visual images. I used to write comic books for Walt Disney, but and I have written a graphic novel based on Outlander. But it's a different beast. There are things you can do in visual images that you can't do in text, and vice versa. There's a lot of stuff you can do in text that you can't do in a visual image. But both of those have their strengths, and I see them as very complementary things, not competing at all. So I was totally thrilled at the idea of having a guaranteed 16-episode season rather than a 2-hour feature film.
Much better deal.
Yeah.
And so the heart of the show, of course, is Claire's character, which you probably set out to cast first, but I hear it came right down to the wire.
Well, at the outset of the project, I said, because I'm an idiot, I said, we're going to cast Claire first, and Jamie's going to be the one that we'll cast at the last minute because, in the books, Jamie's the king of men, and he's all these things that the fans built up in their heads. And who the hell's going to be that? So I think that's going to take forever. And of course, it was exactly the opposite. Sam was the very first one that we cast, and it was just a very simple process. The tape came in, and the word went around the office like lightning, like, we found him. And I was like, what? We're just beginning. He said, no, you got to see this tape. Watch the tape, and sure enough, it was like, oh my God, there he is. That's him. So let's grab him now. Don't be stupid. And then it was the great Scarlett O'Hara search to find Claire. It was a very difficult role. It's every scene, every day. It's a tremendous amount of work. I said that, to me, the fundamental quality of the character was her intelligence. You had to have an actress that really projected this really smart quality, because she lands in this time and she's able to adapt very quickly. And I said everything flows from her intelligence, her strength of character, her adaptability, her sexuality, her warmth. All of it is because of this mind and this sort of intelligence. So you had to have somebody that you could watch think on camera, and someone who was going to be talking to you in voiceover. So it turned out that was a much more difficult proposition than I think I anticipated at the outset. And we saw a lot of really good, really talented actresses, and we just kept saying, no, it's not there, it's not there, it's not there. And we were getting really close. We're starting to sweat it a little bit because we were approaching the shooting point. And then Caitriona's tape came in, and it was a very similar thing to the discovery of Sam. It was just this word went around like lightning. We found her, and I was like, really? And looked at the tape and went, oh my God, there she is. And then we said, let's put her and Sam together and see what the chemistry was. The chemistry was great, and that was it. And we were just sold.
And Caitriona, you're sort of playing two roles in a way. Someone in 1945 and then someone in the 18th century who's pretending to be someone else. How did you approach your character?
Well, I really don't see Claire as playing two roles at all. I think she's essentially the same woman. I mean, she's first and foremost a woman of the 40s. She's just after coming off this experience of working on the front lines in the war, the Second World War, and that's kind of the prism with which I sort of see her world through. And when she is thrown into the 1740s, everything is happening to her, anew, and it's a very, in one way it's kind of difficult because it's very reactionary, but in another way that's quite
easy as an actress because I believe they did it completely, you know, just to make it feel like it was happening to me for real, because I was thrown in at the last minute. Everything was new. They
We'd
had my
cast you
tape for
months ago,
months.
really.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it's a very, very exciting role. It's you know, she's such a strong character. She's very complex. And it really, you know, it's just such a dream role as an actress to get to play.
And you said backstage it's a very physical role. I think you also had to do some like nurses training or something as part of this. What was that all about?
Oh, I do mean bandage. No, it was really, you know, these are some of the great things about being an actor is like with each project you get to learn these new skills. I'm not a nurse, but you know, it was great. We have a consultant on set, and she sourced this document that was from the war. It was a British Army document, and it was all about bandaging in the wartime. And you know, myself and funnily enough, her name was Claire, our on-set doctor. So Claire and I sat down, and we kind of discussed the different, you know, kind of things that we could use within.
From the 1940s? No.
So weird. She has whiskey-colored eyes and curly hair. Maybe she should have played me.
She'd be really.
But you know, yeah, and but it's a very physical role, and a lot of it happens wearing a corset and many yards of heavy wool, which is not always the easiest thing.
Can I say, when we're doing that episode and the next one as well, there was a lot of continuity in the bandages, and our continuity woman would just like hold up her hands and be like, I don't know how to do it. Get Caitriona over, and Caitriona come over and just be like, oh my God, what have you done? She's obviously from the Bronx.
I get very protective
like, oh my God.
The state of Sam's bandages.
Oh my God, what have you done? And she'd redo the bandages, and they're perfect every time. So she's very good.
I love that you're cracking out your New York accent in New
Yeah.
York. That's brilliant.
I kind of fit in, don't you think?
It's great.
I'm walking in here.
Hey.
So Sam, I've got about 300,000 questions from women on the internet for Sam that were sent in today.
Should we go away and come back?
We won't
I mean,
get
who's
through
this
all
show
of them.
really about?
But talk to us about being an 18th century man, because this is, you know, for those of us who hang out with guys from Brooklyn with top knots and beards, and they're very sensitive. This is a different kind of man that we're watching from our homes in 2014.
Jamie's very sensitive. No, it's a great character to play. There's you sort of meet him at the start of the story, and he's displaced, and he's come back to Scotland, and there he is. And I think it's slowly just teasing with you about who he is. And I think through the course of the series, you're going to find out more about him. The books are a great source of inspiration, but for me, it was about going back to Scotland. I'm originally from Scotland, and I'd been away for a long time, and so yeah. So thank Scottish people. Oh, really? Oh, I'm Scottish. Yeah. No, it's really good. It's to go back, and I think I just felt a lot of empathy with Jamie. I think going back to my home country and sort of the place I was born, and there's a lot of stories there and a lot of memories, and it just feels right.
And I hear that you can put on the kilt faster than anyone else.
Yeah, pretty quick. Yeah, you have to, obviously, I was about to do it then. You have to lie down on the floor, and you pleat it up, and it's a long process. You pleat it up into these, and then you lie on the floor in your trailer, which is smaller than you are.
Yeah.
Sometimes your feet up.
It makes the trailer rock a lot, let me just tell you. I'm like, what exactly is going on in there?
So, if the trailer's rocking,
don't come knocking.
Getting my kilt on. Yeah. No, it's
I've
and
heard
then
it
obviously,
called a lot of things, but
yeah, you can wear it in many different ways, and I think even it's sort of discovery of you know, what the kilt can do, and that was all down to Ron's wife, Terry, who's a fantastic costume designer. Terry, best part. I think we've all found a way into the character is definitely through the costumes. You know, this period makes you stand a certain way, and for myself, you know, it was really interesting to discover, you know, that side of the Highland culture.
Mm-hmm. Tobias. Caitriona says she's not playing two different characters, so that question was crap for her, but you're definitely playing two different characters.
I'm not playing two different characters. No, I am playing two different characters. That's right. Yeah.
And so I don't know how the production works. Like, you're one character one day and one the next, or you were able to sort of stick with one and move to another? How does this work? How do you do it?
Yeah, it's been quite mixed up. Luckily, I haven't had to play two different characters on the same day. But I feel like maybe...
Did you ever do them back to back? Did you ever do one day and then the next day?
Say that again?
Did you ever do Frank one day and Jack the next day?
I think so, yeah.
Did you?
But I feel like there's going to be a day at some point where it's going to get very tight, and I'm going to have to they're going to have to say, Tobias, you're going to have to put that wig on. Quick, go.
Forget which you are.
Is it easier to tap into your inner historian or your inner badass?
I don't know. I think we all know the answer to that question. Yeah. I don't need
We all love her. Really didn't answer the question, though. So how do you...
I think she answered it. Yeah. I think, no, it's been really exciting to play two different parts who are very different. I remember when I first talked to Ron about the project, he said something very interesting, which has stayed with me throughout, which was that he was almost as interested in what was different about the characters. He was as interested in what was the same about them as what was different about them. So these are two men both shaped by war. Frank has been through the Second World War. And Jack has been through a war 200 years earlier, a very dirty insurgency war, the Jacobite Rebellion, and that's been a real touchstone, you know. So I think, you know, one of the challenges of playing different parts is that you feel responsibility to make them different, but I think you also have to trust that the production, the costumes, and all the settings will give you a lot of that, so that, you know, the danger is that you sort of start doing like a funny walk for one and then a patch for the other, so that they really get it. Do you see? I'm the other guy now.
That's what I did.
So trusting that the story and the narrative will do a lot of the work for you, and you hope that if you get it right and you do your work well enough, that the difference will be, you know, a little bit in the eyes, and that's a bit more exciting than, you know, sort of laying it on. So, and I hope that we've had moments where that's been achieved. So, yeah.
Ron, there's a lot of sex in these books. I don't know if you
Really?
know that.
Define a lot. You know, what's a lot?
As you say. You know, Game of Thrones has a lot of sex and nudity, and they've kind of taken some ribbing for that. SNL did a hilarious parody. I don't know if anybody remembers that. When you approach the source material, and part of what people love is Diana's sort of frank, awesome portrayal of what happens between two people. How do you approach that? Where's the line? Too much sex, not enough sex?
Well, I mean, it's just all there. You know, it's all in the book, and it's all kind of organic to what the story is. I mean, you can see in the pilot episode, or not the pilot, the first episode, Frank and Claire have sex, and we spend a little bit of time in it, but it's not definitive. It's not the first time they've had sex. It's not the most important time they've had sex, but it was important to sort of say, this is their bridge back to one another. So we sort of treated it accordingly. You saw enough of it to understand what it was about, and then moved on. that's different than, say, Claire and Jamie's wedding night, which is, you know, a pivotal moment. You don't even know how we've done it yet, so, you know, we might have screwed it up for all you know, but...
They don't have sex.
They don't have sex. So there's surprises you don't even know about.
It's pretty quick.
Pretty quick. So we, you know, it's what's appropriate to the story. You know, how much emphasis do you give? You know, how long do you spend on it? What do you show? It really depends on how it's informing, you know, the journey of the characters. And we just, it's in the book, and we just said, all right, well, this is organic to the tale that we're telling, and let's just treat it accordingly. And I don't think we were ever tempted one way or the other. We never said, let's do more, and we were never tempted to sort of shy away from it. We just sort of said, well, what is true, and let's go with that as the hallmark.
So Diana's talked about this as well. The books are so many different genres. In fact, I think when the publishers were trying to figure out how to market the books, it was really complicated because it's an adventure, and it's a costume drama, and it's history, it's all these different things. It's fantasy, it's supernatural. Tonally, when you approach that, and you have a lot of experience with sci-fi, you're kind of a Midas touch with science fiction and supernatural things. It seems much harder than so much of what we see on TV. Is there some secret way you approach that, or are we just all loving fantasy, and this is a big cultural moment for fantasy, and that's why we're all here?
Well, you know, the time travel element it always seemed like it was just a catalyst to what the story was about, you know, so there was never a temptation to make the show completely about that, because that's not the nature of the book, you know, or at least not the first book. And there's more time travel as books go forward, spoiler alert. But for this particular project and this particular moment, time travel is just sort of what happened to this character that then propelled her into this series of adventures. So we chose to sort of treat it like that. And, you know, when I was first thinking about the project, I wasn't sure how I was going to visually portray that. I knew mostly the things I didn't want to do, because I've done a fair amount of time travel in my day. And I knew I didn't want to do a light show. I didn't want her to physically disappear as she touched the stone. I didn't want her to go into the stone. So taking all those things off the table, then it was just a question of, well, what would we do? And that took a while, but it was in the source material. You know, when Claire tells us the story, she describes the journey by referring back to this car crash that she was in. And so I thought, well, let's do that. Let's show the metaphor for how she felt going through the stones, and then just fade out and just bring up, you know, that she's in the 18th century, instead of trying to sort of wow the audience. Because the truth is, we can't wow the audience. You've seen 1,000 journeys through time at this point, and it was better to sort of steer away from it and not try to like impress you than it was to sort of just go for some giant CGI, you know, effect.
Mm-hmm. I love that scene. I do have a few internet questions from folks who wrote in earlier. @Jamie Fair asks, who can drink everyone else under the table? And who is the lightweight?
I usually need help standing up afterwards.
Yeah. Her legs completely go, but the rest of her body's fine.
As long as she's seated, it's okay. I noticed Ron carries a flask, apparently, so now we're learning a little bit more. And they're calling you the Laird now because you've sort of put down stakes in Scotland, I hear.
I don't know that anyone's actually called me the Laird.
Oh, okay.
So, but I would like that.
The publicists are calling you the Laird.
My on-screen credit might say that,
yeah. And Marion Knowles wants to know, what's the funniest experience anyone has had on set? Are you a group of pranksters? Are there practical jokes?
We should probably admit that this is like the question we all fear most. It's like, yeah.
I can tell you the funniest thing I witnessed, even though I wasn't part of it. It was before we started shooting, and there was a time when the cast, the Highlanders, all got their outfits, and then they got their swords, and they were in the armor. We have an armory, like in the studio, and so the cast all came in, and all the Highlanders got their swords and their pistols and their gear, and they all stood and they took photos, and then suddenly they were all little boys, and they were off like waving the swords around. And it was sort of, you had to all stand back lest you be like killed by them all waving these swords and running. It was the funniest thing I'd ever seen.
We were filming last week or maybe the week before with one of the other characters, Ian, who has a wooden leg. And I know it was just the most recent thing, but we were having to move quite rapidly from the corridor to another room, and he's trying to catch up in his wooden leg.
But I was behind him.
And there were stairs. And yeah, you've just got to give him a head start.
Well, it's also, because it was Laura and you kind of had like rushed into this room and I'm supposed to walk behind Ian and Ian's hobbling along and sliding on these like slippery pavestones.
And
it's
we're
really
talking,
not fun
so she's got to catch up, and it was, yeah, it was good.
Sam also doesn't really know how to get dressed in takes. It usually takes a long time.
Takes a lot of takes.
Put clothes on
Yeah.
the right way,
Yeah.
around.
It's easier taking them off than...
But that was one of the costuming issues, is that this is not a time of like bright tartans and all of this. There's a lot of historical accuracy here,
Yeah.
as far as that goes.
I think the bright tartans and all that is, obviously that was the Victorians. It's there's a lot of authenticity to this show. Being Scottish, I was very keen that we kept that, and just in being specific, the costumes are fantastic. Terry sourced the materials, the colors from the particular areas. So the colors are muted and dulled, but I think, you know, it just gives it this sort of gritty, hard edge that I think the show really needs.
Mm-hmm. I completely forgot what I was going to say. So
Such a good
they have
answer.
so much wine backstage.
He does that so
I had
much.
no idea. Like, it was like, woo! Oh, I know. No. Do you want to ask? Do you want to just? Could you just take over? Let me take it back now. At Pygmy Stolt wants to know, what would you take back from the 18th century? What do you like about the 18th century that you would bring to? Nothing, right? They don't have hot baths. Everyone's so dirty. It's like a night. Nothing.
I'd bring my horse.
Okay.
I'd bring Sam's horse.
Yeah, she can't touch it.
I'd take Sam's horse as
Hey.
well. It's a great horse.
So,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
learning to speak Gaelic.
Gaelic.
Gaelic. Something you knew before, or something you had to learn?
No, it's a wonderful part of the show, and I think you see a lot in episode 1 there. It's a lovely color. It was a way for me to get into Jamie, I think. He's a Gaelic speaker first and foremost. It is a beautiful language. It's quite harsh to listen to, but I think it's very descriptive. A lot of mountains in Scotland are named with Gaelic names. When you find out the names, it's actually quite descriptive of what the place is. So it's a way to, it's a sort of tool to separate the audience from the Highlanders, and obviously they're talking about her and she can't understand that, and that's the audience from the same place as Claire is. But I think, you know, during the show continues, you learn more, the audience will learn more words, and I think as Claire does, you begin to understand more. And this is a culture that is kind of wiped out when Culloden happens. I think it was a really interesting to learn and sort of research.
Let's go back to the sex.
Okay.
Now, I think people are curious, though, when you film a sex scene, what are the challenges there? I work at Cosmopolitan. That's all we talk about.
There are many. And I had the pleasure of having sex with them. So there are different challenges with Tobias and Sam. No, I'm joking.
We save it in post.
What's the difference?
No, I mean, it's, you know, they have these things that they give us called modesty. Where's your mind going? I haven't finished my sentence. No, these things called modesty patches that really don't protect your modesty, dignity, or anything else. It's just really not very cool. But I have to say, it's it is a very integral part of the story with both of with Frank and Claire, and with Claire and Jamie especially, and I feel very lucky. I have two. Very nice, respectful actors to work with.
I once went to the bathroom, and I dropped my modesty pouch into the urinal whilst tie it back on, and I had to then tell someone, so they had to put it over the radio. So the whole
Sam
crew
dropped
knew
his modesty pouch in the urinal.
we needed another modesty pouch.
Okay, that turned out to be a good question.
It happens.
Pretty good answer. Well done. That was awkward. Okay.
What do you have to say on this subject, Tobias?
Have you dropped yours?
Modesty patch thoughts.
Weirdly, in the 1940s, they didn't have any modesty
Well, you
patches.
went for more of the skin short than the modesty pouch.
I did that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember. I think I've seen sort of like blotted out. I mean, it's very
Makes you feel
enjoyable. I
good,
liked it,
doesn't
but
it?
I don't remember any details.
Why, thank
It's like-
you. I'm
It's so
glad.
strange. It's a weird amnesia has dropped upon the whole event. The main thing that struck me about doing those sex scenes is that you're doing sex scenes in a pretty busy room.
Oh.
There's like a lot of people. There's there's sound guys, and there's some camera people, and there's a person with a clapperboard. So it's a very kind of a weirdly public activity.
Well, we counted on our wedding night. What was it?
Well, it's supposed to be a closed set. That means they have the minimal crew and people working there, and we counted 14 people.
I think it was 16.
16, 14. 15.
Yeah. That's not very intimate, let me tell you.
And for some people that's the thing, but
Some people.
whatever turns you on. Next question.
Yes. Diana at Three Macaws. I said, when you saw this, what was the scene that you had the most visceral reaction to?
To what I've seen so far?
Yeah.
Well, in fact, it was probably the wedding night. In that it was, despite the challenges involved for the cast, they did it wonderfully. And, it's very tender and evocative and sensual, and, it moves at just the right pace, slow enough to imply the awkwardness of a forced marriage, but with the tension of people who are nonetheless strongly attracted to each other. And all in all, it's extremely beautiful. But in terms of visceral reaction, honesty compels me to add, you have one fine ass, man.
How do you know she's talking to you? It's like, how do you know she's talking to you? She's looking over there.
I've never seen Tobias' ass.
No, I don't think you're talking to me.
No.
I concur. I don't know.
Okay.
It's amazing what you can do in CGI.
I'll be here all night.
But Ron, what was the hardest scene to film? You talked about how it's hard filming horses. There's a lot of things in here that are complicated. What was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, the horses are always a challenge. You know, we taught the cast to ride. They all have different levels of skill when it comes to being on a horse, and the horses just take time. You know, it's the horses ride out of camera and then cut and then reset, and bringing the horses back around takes a while. Getting them into the right place takes a while. Set and do it again. This is actually the first show I'd ever done that actually involved horses. I don't think I'm doing a lot of them after this. It takes quite a while. Anything with animals and children is the old Hollywood saying. But I'd say the biggest challenge in terms of production is just the elements. You know, we shoot on location in Scotland at all hours of the day and night and all weather conditions, and it's hard. It's really hard in the cast and the crew to stand out, you know, in the dead of night and the rain and mud that's over your ankles, and do it again and do it again. Caitriona's there in a shift, and you know, and the Highlanders they're in wool, but it's still pretty brutal, and it's tough on the cameramen and the sound crew, and it's not an easy show to shoot by any means.
And weather as a challenge?
The weather's an enormous challenge. We only actually had to run, there's something called weather cover on a show, where if the weather is so bad, you have sort of an emergency backup to run to weather cover and shoot some interior scenes. And fortunately, you've only had to do that a couple of times in the whole life of the show, which is a miracle considering, you know, where we're shooting and the time of year, you know, through the dead of winter and all that.
So you guys do something where you have a director do 2 episodes and then a new director comes in, is that?
We shoot them in blocks of 2, and then we do what's called cross-boarding them. So say the first 2 episodes, episode 1 and episode 2, are both shot by director John Dahl, who actually deserves an enormous amount of credit. You know, he's not here, but John... You know, John set the tone and set the style of the show, and he shot both episodes 1 and 2 simultaneously. So on each day, you know, you might be shooting a scene from episode 1, you might be shooting scenes from episode 2, you know, later on in the day. And it takes us about a month to shoot a block of 2 episodes. And then there's a month of prep that then overlaps into the next block. So at this moment, well, not this moment, but right now where we are in the production schedule, we're shooting episodes 13 and 14, and then we'll be shooting 15 and 16 going into late September.
And so as actors working with these different directors who come in and out, what's that like for you?
It can be, I've realized that I always have a little while of a transition issue, you know, because you get so used to someone's language, and, you know, after a little while there's a shorthand that develops between a director and an actor. And you know, it can be great having a new infusion of enthusiasm and new ideas that come into it, but there's also that kind of thing of where you have to relearn someone's kind of language of filming. But we've been really lucky, you know, we've had great directors throughout, and we've been even lucky where we've had some directors come back and do a second block. Which has been really great, because at that point then you just know them so well that it just makes it all easier to kind of just get down to work, because you know how to get the best out of each other at that point.
I mean, one of the interesting things about doing such a long form drama of 16 episodes is that obviously you have your relationship with your separate directors, and that sort of, you know, depending on how you get along with them, that sort of varies, but your sort of primary creative sort of narrative relationship is really with the showrunner, in this case Ron, for your kind of, to sort of calibrate a performance over that many hours, you know, because these, you know, directors are coming in and out. Yeah, and we're very lucky to have Ron in that position. Yeah.
We're going to throw it out to the audience and get some questions from y'all. Do we have a microphone down here? Here we go.
Hi. I was wondering, there's obviously been a lot of research that has gone into the show, both from the actors and obviously, Diana, your research astounds me, and Ron. Was there anything while you were researching things that you were really surprised about, or that you hadn't thought or hadn't known about and then said, hey, I'm so excited, I hated this?
Well, I was very surprised that there were no modesty pouches in 1940.
Well,
I was surprised by what Sam alluded to earlier, the difference in just the color palette of the tartans and the fact that the Highland culture had been wiped out pretty much in the 1740s, and that what we kind of know as Scottish tartans when you go to a tourist shop or something in Glasgow and Edinburgh and you buy these bright greens and reds and pinks and yellows and so on, that none of that existed, that the color schemes were far more muted. So my whole impression of what Scotland meant, in the old days was pretty radically different.
And you, Diana, you wrote the first book, having researched it all.
I did. Yes, no, I was mostly surprised at the state of underclothes in the 18th century, which is to say that they didn't have them. Well, you had a shift and you had stockings, but there was nothing in the way of drawers. But I was a cameo actor for a day and a half, and I will tell you why they didn't wear underclothes. It's because it is almost impossible to go to the bathroom in an 18th century dress.
One of the great challenges of working in Outlander.
Exactly so.
All right, do we have another question?
Hi. I just wanted to know if anybody has read ahead the books, or have you asked Diana what happens to your characters? And if you do know, what are you most looking forward to filming if we get a second series?
I personally haven't really had time. From the day that I got cast, which was September 11th last year, I was in Scotland 3 days later. I was living in LA at the time. And I haven't, I had read the first book, and since then it's kind of been scripts. But my sister somehow managed to read all 7 books in about 3 months. And she loves telling me what's about to happen to me. And I keep saying, stop, I don't want to know. I'm kind of trying to just focus on what's happening right now. She's like, did you know? Did you know? And I'm like, stop. But I'm looking forward to when we finish. I'm going to definitely get straight into book 2 and then.
It feels very important. I read book 1 a few times, and then book 2 I almost finished, but then it felt like too much information. It feels very important that we play the moments now. And also the script, we're staying very close to the book, but it just feels like we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. But we all kind of have a rough idea. We know what could happen if we went to another series.
I was intrigued reading the beginning of the second book that Jack's brother turns up.
Yeah, you're not playing.
So I think...
You've got 2 already. Anyone else you want to play?
Is it going to be an Eddie Murphy series where you play everyone at the dinner table?
That's a good idea, right? Come on.
This is how actor negotiations begin, is just like this.
Hi. Thank you so much. That show was absolutely fabulous. Really, really enjoyed it. My name is Leslie, and I kind of have a question for, in different ways, each one of you. I know Diana has said that even though you folks are the characters, you're really not the characters that she sees when she writes the books or she reads the books for herself. And I was wondering, who do you visualize when you're reading the books? Do you visualize each other? Do you visualize yourselves in the parts?
That's a good question. Obviously, the first time I read the book, I don't even remember who I visualized. I had 4 days to read it before I tested, and I was going to just read it. I'm not sure. I was just plowing through it. When I've gone back, because I go back a lot to it, I think actually, I think. Is that weird? Yeah, I think somehow weirdly we're all in there.
I think it's about a voice. I mean, you get a sense of this character. You don't picture it in images. And I don't know how you write, Diana, but I've always had writers say that they hear, the voice, and I think that might be the same with playing a character.
I mean, I found I read
See
it.
yourself.
Just lots of me, versions of me. Yeah. I can play him, and I can definitely play him.
Menzies.
Let's sort of get away with her. It was like it's different when you're reading, when you're going to be sort of adapting and working on the piece. It's a sort of different, and certainly you're sort of concentrating on certain characters and thinking about what you're going to sort of use. It was like a different sort of type of reading in a way. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
Hello? Hi. Sorry, I don't want to fall off this balcony.
Oh.
Hi, I'm blinded.
We can't see anything.
They're up there, I think.
I noticed in the show that you guys are really keeping to how graphic a lot of the medical things that Claire encounters are. And I know we all went kind of, ugh, when he popped the shoulder back in. Is that going to be something that is, I know we talked on the sex topic for a long time, but I feel like Claire's medical experience is huge in the books. And is this something that you're going to really try to keep true to in the series, or is this kind of going to be like, we can only get away with so much through Stars that we don't want to show all this blood and guts and stuff?
No, Stars is a particularly fearless network when it comes to any of this stuff. I don't think I've ever gotten a note from them that was about too much. We can't look at that anymore. I mean, yeah, they're not worried about that. So we play the medicine. There's some ugly things that happen, and we pretty much show it, not to sort of just shove it in your face and make you uncomfortable, but there are times when things happen that are uncomfortable to people or are particularly grisly, and we try to, again, try to go for what is true in the scene. And again, we don't overdo it and we don't shy away from it. It depends on what's natural at that moment.
All right, we've got time for 2 more questions.
Hi, Diana, it's nice to see you again. I'm Debbie Kennedy from Pittsburgh.
Happy to meet you again.
And I wondered, we've heard a little bit about your audition, the chemistry test of Sam and Kat together. Could you tell us what those scenes were and what it was like?
Well, you saw one of them tonight.
Help, stop, he's going over?
Stop, help.
Stop,
he's
help.
Going over. Yeah, I think you guys have probably seen that scene done about 1,000 times.
Became a standing joke in the writer's room that they never wanted to hear those lines ever again.
So that was one of, no, that was one that I taped, but that wasn't one that we did in the room. I'm trying to remember exactly.
There was.
I know what one of them was.
Yeah, I know what one of them was.
We had a fight. What was the fight?
No, there was a post-coital scene.
Oh yeah, from the wedding night.
We both lit
wedding
up
night
cigarettes, looked dreamily at each other.
Something about snakes, and and there was this yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. They've got to.
Yeah. The other one was it was the fight that we had, and Sam, it was great. It was I feel like we both kind of had a lot of fun that day. We just got into the scenes and they became very real. And at one point he got me in a bear hug, and it wasn't supposed to be like that. And I was just like, dude, this is my test. What are you doing?
I could see she was really pissed off at me. And Anna, it was kind of fun.
It was really fun. I think we came out with like marks after that. But
I'd also say that, I mean, they were very close to what Diana's dialogue in the books were. I mean, I think they were almost pretty much straight from the book, and so that was really interesting. So they were quite long scenes as well.
They were. I was impressed that you got through it. Without
they were like 20 pages or something. But really something gritty to get hold of, and I think that's the joy of this series. Really.
No, it was very impressive to watch. I'll tell you. Yeah, it was the part where you shouted, "You do belong to me," when you clutched her to you, at which point she shakes free and
that's because I let her
gives
go.
it back.
last question.
Oh, I get the last question.
You do.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. This question really, I guess, would be mostly for Sam, but probably all of you. You clearly are filming in Scotland. It's a huge year for Scotland, 2014. They have a vote coming up, Commonwealth Games, a lot going on. We've seen through Diana's story, we've heard about the 18th century Scottish culture. Now we're visually seeing the beauty that is the Scottish Highlands. But what is it that you would like us to know about the Scottish people? What is it you hope that those of us who are watching across the world are really gaining and learning about, what Scotland is?
Wow, that's a great question. I think, well, hopefully we've tried to be as authentic as possible. And as we said before, this is a race that were kind of wiped out. So it's a kind of celebration of that and a specific time. I mean, Scotland obviously has a big choice coming up, but it goes back for generations, and Scotland has always been politically very, very troublesome. The clans are always fighting amongst themselves. The Mackenzies, the Frasers, the Grants are, and when there's a common enemy, which is the British, then they band together. But it's always been very difficult, and I think the politics are really shown in the show, with Jamie and Dougal and Colm, and so nothing's changed. There's always turmoil and strife, and I think, it's a wonderful place to set a story, and hopefully, you get to see an authentic Scotland.
I think Scotland's really such a huge character in this show, and I had not spent a lot. I'd been to Scotland a few times, but only been to Edinburgh, and it's really been one of the great parts about this job is discovering the beauty of the landscape there. And I think everyone, we have pretty much predominantly a Scottish crew who are absolutely fantastic. We get to, employ a lot of amazing craftsmen, from Terry employing knitters who are these old ladies who are living in the outer wherevers, they're knitting stuff for a show, or we had these amazing basket weavers who, this is an industry that was almost completely dead, and because of our show, we've been able to give them so much employment. And I think that's something that we all really feel very proud of, is that we've been able to come to Scotland and really, bring a lot of employment and a lot of support to the economy there. And, Scotland's beautiful, and it shows in the show.
All right, well, thank you all for being here. Great answers, a lot of fun. Thank you.